Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to answer a question real quick, but before I do, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit the like button if you like the content. Comment if you have anything to add to what I talk about in this video. So, yeah, let's do this.
Your hustle got to be strong in this industry, as in any other industry.
Alright, so, question. He's basically asking how I decided on what van I was buying and what's my thoughts on the Promaster versus the Transit. So, obviously, I have a Ford Transit, but prior to the Ford Transit, I had an E350 Ford, and I drove that for 5 years. And that van was such a solid van that I was like, you know, I leaned towards Ford because of that. Ford also usually has a pretty good heavy-duty truck line. And so my thinking was, you know, if the engineering on those things are pretty good, the Transit should be pretty decent. Now, with most vehicles that they come out with, whether it be Ford, Chevy, whatever, the first several years are going to be kind of glitchy, which I expected. I actually didn't want to get a Transit until they had been out about 5 or 6 years. But the market just was changing so quickly to so many people getting the bigger vans that it just made sense to get the bigger van. And plus, I had 770,000 miles on my E-Series van, and the deciding factor to finally just pull the trigger now, well, let me step back for just 1 second. I had went and inquired about a Transit, and I was trying to trade in my E-Series. I still owed $7,000 on my E-Series at that point, and the trade-in value, they was only willing to give me like $1,000, which, I mean, 770,000 miles on this van. Body was in good shape. Everything was in good shape. It ran great. I mean, nothing was wrong with it. It didn't leak nothing. I wasn't burning a ton of oil or anything. I mean, that van was still running extremely well. But because of the mileage, they wasn't giving me no value. So I would have been $6,000 upside down on that van, which means negative equity, which would have had to have been put on top of the new van loan that I would have gotten. So I decided, man, F that. I'm going to get this van paid off before I do it. Ended up taking a trip out to California, and I hit some of those hills, and I could just feel the difference in the van. You know, you could just feel the age of the van at that point. When you start, you know, my mind was, you know, already getting into thinking about a new van. So now I'm starting to feel all the differences in the one that I'm in that had all the miles. And so when I came back in after that trip out, being out to California and all that, I was like, I'm getting the van. I don't care. I'll take the negative equity. I put it on top of it. I don't give a shit. I don't recommend doing it that way. I mean, by all means, don't add on more than you have to. Don't get a van that's overpriced. Don't just get a van for the sake of getting a van, because that's what I did with my first van anyhow. So I don't want to get too far off the topic of this video, but anyhow, so I go in, and that's what dictated me getting a van as soon as I did, which was 2017, and the Transit had only been out 2 years at that point. So anyhow, that's what led me to go the Ford side, is because how reliable the E-Series was. I figured that some of that engineering is going to go into the Transit, and the Transit should be a similar van. So that's why I decided. Now, when I went and bought my 19, I did think about getting the Promaster, because the Promasters were cheaper than the Transits. I don't know if they still are now in this current market. I haven't priced any. But they were cheaper by about, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000 easy on the base packages. And what led me to not get the Promaster was you just seen too many issues with the top end having to be rebuilt after very low mileage. It's not to say Ford didn't have any problems. Obviously, there's problems with each van, but it just seemed like the Promaster was more problematic. And I love the power of the EcoBoost Turbo 3.5 in the Transits. So, and I wanted to keep the same type of van, so I have familiarity with the issues. You know, I'd already had the Transit for a couple of years, so I was familiar with what goes on with it and how it drives, what it should do, all those things. So just being already in Fords, that's what led me to do the Ford to begin with, as far as the Transit over the Promaster. I think the Promasters, at least you're not seeing it as often. I don't know if the Promasters are holding up better than they were when they first came out. If they did anything different, but you just don't see as many people posting about it, or maybe I'm just not noticing it now because I've seen so much of it and it's just kind of like white noise now at this point. So that's what led me to the Transit over the Promaster. When I was first doing this job and I was driving for a fleet owner, when I first started looking into getting a van, at the time you had the Chevy Express, you had the Ford E-Series, you had the Mercedes and Freightliner Sprinter, and you had the box vans, you know, the cutaways box vans. And so that was basically what you had to choose from when I first started looking for a van. That was in 2013. So just to give you an idea of the things I was looking for when I first started, I knew my funds were extremely low. I knew that I was going to have to finance a van. So I was looking, you know, I talked to drivers of all those vans, and talked to, and it was also trying to decide, do I want to do diesel or gas? Because when I first got into this, I always leaned towards diesel being what you'd want to come and do all these miles and be over the road. But come to find out, these gasoline engines have come so far that it's really no different. So what made me decide gasoline over diesel was the fact that if something does break, it's going to be more costly to fix a diesel than it is a gas engine. The fuel mileage, it was pretty much a wash doing the numbers, you know, looking at the fuel mileage that people were getting, you know, that you should get in a diesel as opposed to what you get in a gasoline, doing the math. It was really just a couple of pennies difference. Talking to people in the Sprinters, everything I kept hearing was when something did break, it was extremely expensive, hard to find a shop to work on it, hard to find the parts. So it was like, my thoughts on a Sprinter was like, damn, man, if I have a breakdown right away before I have a chance to really get going and saving any money or have any money come in, I'm going to be SOL real quick. So then I was looking at the box vans, because I did want something bigger, obviously, because I'm going to live in the van and I want cargo space. So I wanted something bigger. So I was leaning towards the Sprinter and the box vans. Talking to several people with the box vans, the biggest thing was fuel mileage. Fuel mileage was like, I want to say 11 or 12 miles to the gallon. If any of you are driving any of those cutaway or box vans, like those old yellow type looking things, or any of the newer Transit ones with the cutaway with the boxes, you know, tell me if it's different. But I was being told 11, 12 miles to the gallon. So I'm like, man, that's a lot of money to sink into gas. You know, it just didn't seem worth it, because at the time I wasn't seeing any real major significant difference in the amount of freight you're going to get and money you're going to make with those things, as opposed to just a regular van. So then it come down to the Chevy Express or the Ford E-Series. And I actually wanted the Express. I wanted the Chevy Express. Both of them I wasn't hearing nothing, you know, horrible on or anything. Now, the reason I was leaning towards the Chevy Express was because the wheelbase was longer. The Ford E-Series has so much ass. Same thing with the Transit. There's just so much ass hanging past the rear axle, which I don't understand why they do that. I should look into that and see if there's any specific reason why they do that. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me for, you know, putting weight on the vehicle. But anyhow, so I wanted the Chevy Express because it seemed like the weight distribution would have been better. So I actually went to the dealer, told him I wanted a Chevy Express, told him what I was looking for, and he calls me. He's like, hey, I got your van. I got it in. It's here. I show up to the dealership. He's all excited, of course. You know how salesmen are, man. They're just, oh, yeah, it is the best thing. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Walk out the door. It's a Ford. And he's like, oh, here it is, man. I'm like, yeah, it's a nice van. I said, but it's a Ford. He's like, huh? So, anyhow, knowing what I know now, I should have used that against him to knock some money off or to get something, extra. But I was, excuse me, but I was I'd already given my notice. I'd already handed the van in. And now I'm here to buy this van. Because that's just the where I was at. I was like, I had to have a van. Which, that was one of the times that, I was really in a rush to do anything business-wise because I knew I was going to make more money owning my own van. But anyhow, so I decided to take the Ford. And, I'm glad to this day. I'm glad I did. I'm glad that happened. Maybe it was meant to be. I don't know. Because, like I said, that Ford E-Series is a monster of a vehicle. That thing is just a beast. So, I ended up taking the van, and that's how I ended up with the Ford E-Series. And then, again, just fell in love with the Ford overall, and I've just leaned forward ever since as far as like when it comes to these vans or heavy duty vehicles. So that's my story on why I take Ford over the Promaster. Hope that helped. Alright guys, I'm out.